Hi everybody, hope you're having a great week. Welcome back to SDRTK. Today I'm taking a look at a versatile condenser microphone from Rode. It's the M3. Now the M3 can be used to record vocals or instruments, both acoustic as well as electric through amp cabinets. So really useful that way. Also, although it uses phantom power, you can use a battery option with this microphone too. So for those of you that want to use this in a remote situation, or maybe you got a portable recorder but you don't want to supply phantom power, this could be really useful for you as well. Got a great build quality for transportation. So in this video, here's what we're going to take a look at. First, I'll go ahead and roll back the clock. I'll unbox this microphone for you. I'll go through a few of the key specs on it as well. Then we'll get into unprocessed audio tests. We're going to use the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6 as well as the ART voice channel and DBX286S preamps. Again, those will all be preamps only. Once you get an idea of what this microphone sounds like out of the box with a few different flavors of preamps, then we'll go ahead and we'll do some mic comparisons. I'll pick a few out that I think are a good comparison use case against this mic. So we'll do that. Also in there, I'm going to throw in a new test, which is going to be a 12-volt phantom power test. This mic is rated for both 24 and 48 volts phantom power, but I know some of you have mixers that output 12 volts, so I've got a new variable supply. I'll try it out on 12 volts just to show you if this is usable or not with that. Then we'll go ahead and do a few physical tests. I'm going to check plosives and handling noise, a few other things here, working distance. So we'll do that. Then we'll go over to the guitar and bass amps. I'll mic those up and we'll compare this microphone against the Shure SM57 because, again, the versatility of this microphone is probably going to let you work with it either, again, as a vocal mic or with cabinets. So we'll check that out. Then we'll come back over to spoken word. We'll do some processed audio tests. First in the box, I'll use the Scarlett 8i6 with plugins to give us EQ and compression. Then we'll move over to the ART voice channel and the DBX286S, and we'll check out a processed audio chain sound on this mic again with those. So a wide variety of things, again, for a versatile microphone. Let's get right to it. All right, so let's go ahead and unbox the M3. Comes in a nice solid quality box, as you'd expect from a manufacturer like Rode. I'll just go ahead and slice this open. And now get it open here. Inside we have a few things. I can see they're loosely packed inside. We have a foam pop filter, a windscreen, a microphone clip. It's kind of a softer plastic, feels pretty good. Got a 5/8 to 3/8 adapter as well. Go ahead and take the mic and pouch out. Inside we have a few other things. I see we get a sticker, we get some information here as well. There's also the 10-year warranty. Rode provides a great warranty with their products. Again, really good quality manufacturer. They do things well. So we'll just throw that to the side. I'll take a look at the pouch itself. Really great for storing the microphone, especially if you transport it with you, if you like to do some remote recording. I like to see it's packed with desiccant. That's really good for a condenser microphone. Helps to make sure everything gets to you in 100% shape. Then we have the mic itself. Appears to be a really solid build. It's pretty heavy. Nice solid screen mesh on the top. Got a switch for off on as well as a bass roll off, so nice to see there. Microphone looks really good at first glance here, so let's check it out. Now, the Rode M3 is a permanently polarized condenser microphone. It actually uses a J-FET impedance circuit. This is a cardioid polar pattern with a frequency response of 40 to 20,000 hertz. Has a sensitivity of -40 dB with an impedance of 200 ohms. Equivalent noise is 21 dBA, so a little bit on the higher side. We'll see how that translates in the real world. Dynamic range of 121 dB. With a signal-to-noise ratio of 73 dB. Now, the control in this mic has three modes: off or mute, as well as flat and a high-pass filter at 80 Hz. It works with 48 or 24 volts of phantom power. As I said earlier, I'm going to try it with 12 as well, see how that works out, plus the internal 9-volt battery that's rated for 200 hours of life. So, again, pretty useful for those of you that are using this on the road. And a weight is about 390 grams. So, again, it's a pretty heavy microphone for the size, but I think it's solid, and that's important if you're going to be transporting it. Now, up until this point, you've been listening to me on the M3 connected directly into my Focusrite Scarlett 8i6, 48 volts phantom power, got the gain set at about 1 o'clock, and no processing applied. This is what the microphone sounds like out of the box. We'll go ahead now, and I'll move it over to the ART voice channel, and we'll listen to a tube-style preamp without processing. Now I've connected the M3 directly into my ART voice channel, and this is a tube preamplifier. What I've done here is use the patch base so that I'm routing the audio directly out of the preamp. We're bypassing anything to do with the processing on the channel. And I wanted to give you an idea of the flavor of a little different preamp on this microphone, a tube preamp, because again, using a different preamp will alter the character of the mic. So depending what you're using or the sound you're looking for, this will give you an idea of how the M3 responds. Okay, and now I moved the M3 over to my DBX286S, and I've used the patch bay so that I'm routing the mic preamp directly out. I'm not recording anything through the processing on the DBX, and the idea again is to give you a listen to what the M3 sounds like through a DBX preamp, just a little bit different flavor, so this is what it sounds like. Now I've moved the microphone back to the Scarlett 8i6. We'll go ahead and do the phantom power test. Now again, this microphone is rated to work with 48 volts and 24 volt phantom power. I have 48 volts, 12 volts, as well as the internal battery supply here that I'm going to test. So up till now, of course, 48 volts phantom power, no problem with my monitoring. I can hear it seems to be working fine. Now we'll go ahead and switch over to 12 volts. Now I have the microphone connected up to 12 volts phantom power using my Behringer PS400 phantom power supply. And this will be useful for those of you that are thinking about using this with a mixer that supplies 12 volts. Again, for phantom power, there are three standards, 12, 24, and 48. 24 kind of isn't seen all that commonly. It's really 48 is most common, but there are some mixers that put out 12. Some of your mixers might be spec'd at 15 volts, so that's common as well. But this will give you an idea anyways if it's going to be suitable for that. To my monitoring, I can't really hear much of a difference, so this microphone seems to be pretty forgiving on phantom power. Now I'll go ahead and turn it off. We'll go over to the internal battery. And now the microphone is running off its own internal 9-volt battery. And this is kind of the sound. Again, I'm not noticing any really major difference to my hearing with my monitoring right now, as I wouldn't expect to. The microphone is spec'd to work with a 9-volt battery. And so, again, I think this is an option. It's kind of handy for those of you that want to use this remotely. Interestingly enough, I did have one issue with the battery compartment. So I'll just show you how the battery's installed. Basically, the microphone threads apart here, and I took it off. And what you'll see here is the first time I took it off, I had a terrible time trying to put it back on. The threads actually have a defect in here. There was a couple of filings that I was able to finally get out, but it took me a lot to work on this to get it to work. I had to use some WD-40 and clean those threads up, and fortunately it still threads in well now. So I think that's just limited to my one unit, a little bit of a manufacturing defect, but I thought you should know. As you see, the battery just clips in inside. You thread this back on, and then it's a matter of using the switch to turn the power off and on for the battery. So useful to have that built in. Now we'll get into our first microphone comparison. I have the Rode M3 on one side. I have the Audio-Technica AT2021 on the other side. Right now you're listening to me on the Rode M3. This is connected directly into the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6 with the gain set at 1 o'clock. No processing applied. This is exactly as it's been throughout the entire video so far. Now we'll go ahead and switch over to the Audio-Technica. And now you're listening to me on the Audio-Technica AT2021. This is also a condenser microphone. It's a small diaphragm condenser, so a little bit different. It's also connected directly into the Scarlett 8i6 with phantom power on. This one has the gain set at about noon, so a little bit less gain on the AT2021 versus the Rode M3. Again, a slightly different type of microphone, but this will give you an idea of the difference in sound. And now that you've heard the difference, can you tell which microphone I'm speaking on? Is it the Rode M3 or is it the Audio-Technica AT2021? Check the top corner to find out. And for the second comparison, we have the Rode M3 versus the AKG P170. This will give you another idea here. We have a small diaphragm condenser microphone, a little bit more expensive. Again, the M3 is generally in and around 150 US dollars. The P170 can get closer to 200, just depends a little on the timing and sale. You're hearing me right now on the Rode M3, again into the Scarlett 8i6. No changes here, gain at 1 o'clock, phantom power applied, no processing. Now let's go ahead and listen to the P170. And now you're listening to me on the AKG P170. This is a really popular microphone in studio use, certainly a lot for miking up instruments and that, but it also can be very, very clear and natural for vocals. And so that's the difference in the sound. This one's a little more sensitive. Gain only set to 11 o'clock on the Scarlett 8i6 here, so a little less gain required with the P170. And now that you've been listening to me on both the Rode M3 and the AKG P170, which one am I speaking on now? Check the upper corner to find out. And now we'll do a comparison between the Rode M3 and the Audio-Technica AT2020, another kind of a standard, certainly an industry standard, studio standard, become very popular as far as inexpensive large diaphragm condensers go. So we're starting out here on the Rode M3. Nothing has changed. Scarlett 8i6 with a gain at 1 o'clock. Now we'll switch over to the AT2020. And now you're hearing me on the AT2020. I have the gain set at about 1130 on this microphone. So again, it's a little more sensitive than the Rode M3. Large diaphragm. So again, little different use case here for both microphones. The AT2020, again, well suited for vocals, for voice, certainly. The M3, a lot perhaps broader applications in some views anyways. My opinion, I think the 2020 works better on voice, but some people do like to use it for recording acoustic instruments as well. And so this is the 2020. Now let's see if you can tell the difference. And now you've been hearing me on the Rode M3 as well as the Audio-Technica AT2020. Can you tell which one I'm speaking on? Again, check the upper corner to find out. And for the final microphone comparison, this time I have the Rode M3 on the one side, and I have the Warm Audio WA47JR on the other side. This microphone is a FET condenser microphone. It has a 1-inch K47 style reproduction capsule from Warm Audio, so a very different microphone than what we're looking at with the Rode. But again, this is a really popular microphone in studios. You'll find it in studios all over the world, widely used for recording everything from vocals through to instruments, both acoustic and electric. So starting out here on the Rode M3, this microphone again connected into the Scarlett 8i6, gain set at 1 o'clock, no processing. Let's go ahead and switch over to the Warm Audio. All right, and now you're listening to me on the Warm Audio 47, the WA47JR. This again is a FET microphone, so it's got a K47 style capsule with FET circuitry inside. This again connected directly into the Scarlett 8i6, gain set at about 1230, so a little bit less than on the Rode here. Again, no processing. This is what it sounds like. I'll have a full review on this microphone coming up soon, but I thought I should include it in this comparison. Now let's see if you can tell the difference. And again, now that you've been listening to me on both the Rode M3 as well as the Warm Audio WA47JR, can you tell the difference? Take a look at the top screen to find out which one I'm speaking on. Okay, and now I moved the M3 just up out of frame here as a boom application, just so you could hear that. I've increased the gain to about 2 o'clock on the Scarlett 8i6, just to give it that little extra boost from this distance. It's probably, I'm going to say, about 16, 18 inches away from my mouth. I can hear it picking up some of the room noise, no question here, but compared to having it up close. But still, I think it's doing a reasonable job for a microphone of this type as a boom application. I wanted you to have a chance to hear it. Again, looking at this as a versatile microphone, one that you could use for a lot of applications if you had to take it with you. And so boom just might be one of those. So now that we've taken a look at that, let's go ahead and go through a few physical tests on this microphone. First of all, I'll let you know I'm at a working distance here, about 6 inches off my mouth so far for the entire video. And that's, I think, reasonable. This, as a condenser microphone, is going to have a lot wider range. So you can see if I move back to, about a foot away now, you're still going to get good level. I'm getting good sound coming through, certainly in my monitoring, no issues there. And we really can have a wide working range. Typically, I like to be between 6 and 8 inches away from the microphone. I think that's just a good standard practice for working distance. Sometimes closer with a dynamic microphone even, but again, I think this microphone is pretty forgiving. As I move around, I'm not, noticing a tremendous difference in the way it's picking up. So pretty useful if you're in a situation where you have to move around a bit. You're not really standing right in front of the microphone. So that, that could be good to know for you as well. Let's do the distance test on this as well. So I'll actually back up. I'll turn the microphone a little bit towards me here and move back now. Back to about a foot away from the microphone, a little more, maybe about 18 inches away from the microphone. And I'm still getting plenty of signal here, no issues with how it's picking up. Back up a little further. Now I'm at about 2 feet away from the microphone, and this is the sound you'll get here. My space is what I consider to be moderately treated. I do have sound treatment in here, but there could be more in my opinion. But here it is at 2 feet away. Now we'll go ahead and test for plosives and for proximity effect. First we'll do proximity. I'll get really close on the microphone, and you can hear as it starts to get that proximity effect engaged. And definitely is getting that effect. I can hear it in my monitoring. So Again, I felt there's a pretty wide working range with this microphone. It does start to creep up on you as you get within about 4 inches or so, but I think a lot of flexibility. So I'm actually pretty impressed with working distance and the range with this mic. Now we'll also do, we'll check here for plosives. People, because. And we're getting plosives there, certainly. I mean, internally this microphone does have, you know, windscreen, but it certainly is giving us some. Now it does come with a foam filter. I'll go ahead and throw that on here for you as well. Apologize for the noise. Okay, and so now I have the foam filter on. Also, you can listen to see if that's made any difference in the tone. It'll give you an idea of that. Let's check for plosives here. People, because. And to my monitoring, that did clean it up quite a bit. It's not perfect, of course, but somewhat there. You can also help that out, by the way, by just keeping the filter a little more off of it. I slid the filter a little bit further up on the mesh area on the microphone here, so it leaves a little more distance to the capsule. People, because. And that'll make a bit of a difference as well. I'll take it off. And, you know, if you really want to use this for any kind of voiceover in that, you'd want to use some kind of a pop filter. So people, because. And yeah, that cleans it up completely. So, I mean, if you're wanting it for that application, it was kind of critical voiceover, you'd want to install a pop filter in front. Now we'll go ahead and check for background noise. So typing on a keyboard in the background here, and definitely the microphone is picking it up. So you have to be aware of it. It is a condenser microphone. It is going to pick up around it. Now this microphone is also said to have an internal shock mount. So let's go ahead and see what that's like. And I mean, I can definitely hear it picking up the noise as I'm handling it. Just to grab it. Yeah, and it definitely does pick up noise from that. You'd probably, again, you'd want to use a shock mount if you were going to try to use this on a kind of a hand boom situation, or if you're going to be moving the boom arm around a lot. So that's just something to be aware of here. Another thing I'll mention while I'm doing that, I noticed with this clip, first of all, it doesn't have any way to tighten it up. So, you know, moving it back and forth, it relies on the friction that it has. I'm not sure over a long term if you're moving it back and forth a lot, if that would cause any issues, but it's something you need to know. The other thing about it is it has quite a bit of flexibility and give. I noticed that the clip itself, where it goes into this slot for adjustment, has quite a bit of flex to it. So again, I worry a little bit when I push on it too hard. Maybe the fact that it's flexible means that it's not going to break or be an issue. But again, just a little different than what I'm used to working with. Just something, again, you need to be aware of. And I'll test the off-axis rejection and polar pattern. And this is an end address microphone. So unlike a lot of condensers you may be used to where it's a side address, this here you actually speak directly into the end. I have it set up across axis slightly to avoid plosives really. But let's go ahead and test that. So we have in the front, this is the sound we get. Now at 90 degrees, this is the sound you're going to get. Turning it around to 180, so right from behind the microphone, this is the sound. And the other 90 degrees, this is the sound you get. And I would say, based on my monitoring, that yes, the microphone does behave like a cardioid pattern. We're getting that lobe of sensitivity in the front here. It's pretty wide cardioid, but definitely in behind, we're getting that rejection. So behaves as the spec would say. Now we'll just quickly test the controls on the microphone. Right now I have the control set at flat, and so you're getting that flat frequency response. And I must say, based on the graph, the response to this microphone is rated to be very flat. And the sound sounds to me that way too. I'm not hearing anything grossly overboosted. Let's go ahead and turn on the high pass filter, which is going to roll off the bass at 80 hertz at about 12 dB per octave. Okay, and so now I've engaged the high pass or low cut filter, whatever you want to call it. And so the idea of that is to take away some of the noise. I'll tap on it again and see. Usually engage that to try and get rid of some rumble or background noise and a little bit of handling noise. Might have made a little bit of a difference. I'm not noticing a tremendous difference in tone in my monitoring, but it is hard to hear when you have the microphone when you're speaking actually and have the headphones on. So I'll listen back to it after and see if there's more of a difference. Now the power switch for the battery is also a mute, so And so you can use that as well to mute the microphone. I wonder if you could hear some of the noise from switching it back and forth. I could hear a little bit in my monitoring as well. So the switch is there. Another thing to be aware of is this microphone does actually have a pad switch as well. It is inside. So as I showed you where the battery compartment is, there's a pad switch for either nothing, -10 or -20 dB. So if you're going to record a very loud source, that might be useful for you as well. Now we'll go ahead and test out the M3 on the guitar and bass amps. We'll test rock and blues guitar as well as bass, and we'll compare this microphone to the SM57, definitely a studio standard. Okay, and now looking at the frequency analysis comparisons here, the direct recording into the 8i6 versus the two microphones, we can definitely see difference between the direct and the two mics, and that's to be expected because of the guitar amp. But when we look at the patterns of the two microphones, the M3 and the SM57 have really captured very similar frequencies and dynamics. You know, the difference between the two of them, I would say, would be very difficult to hear. Let me know in the comments below if you could hear the difference in the recordings as I made them. But looking at the frequency analysis again, not only, you know, the frequencies, but also the dynamics are very, very similar. So as far as recording the rock guitar on this amp, you could use the SM57 and the M3 pretty much interchangeably, in my opinion. Now let's go ahead and check out blues guitar. Okay, and now we're looking at the comparison of the blues guitar recording. And again, we have direct versus the two microphones. And of course, the amp again makes a difference. So the direct is going to look different. But when I look at the M3 and the SM57, again, they're very similar, but the M3 definitely is picking up some more detail, you know, in the higher frequencies here. We're seeing, you know, compared to the 57. And I would expect that for, you know, kind of a very detailed open signal with a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone. So the M3 seems to pick up a lot more detail here, which to me makes it a better candidate for recording things like blues guitar, acoustic guitar. This makes me think that that would be a better choice for that. Again, both are usable here, but I think unlike the rock guitar, when we're getting into sort of the more detail that we find in the blues guitar, the M3 certainly picked up more information, and you know, again, neither of them is exactly the same as the direct recording, but certainly very acceptable. Okay, and now we're looking at the frequency comparison for the bass recording. And again, we can see a difference between the direct recording and the two microphones, and that's to be expected with the frequency response limitations of my bass amp. But looking at the two microphones, again, very, very similar here. The M3 perhaps picks up a little more information in the higher frequencies, but again, it would be hard to tell the difference between these two recordings listening back to them. Again, let me know if you were listening when I recorded them, if you could tell the difference. But I'm going to say here that both of these could be used very interchangeably, and that's good news for the M3. I mean, it's shaping up to be a very competent microphone for miking amp cabinets, either guitar or bass. So a very useful item could be for your mic locker. And now we'll get into our processed audio demonstration. We're starting out in the box here, so I have the microphone connected directly into the Focusrite Scarlett 8i6, gain still set at 1 o'clock. Now I've added a couple of plugins here. I have the soft tube saturation knob, and I've applied just a very little bit of saturation here. And then we're going into Isotope's Neutron 3, and I've just applied EQ and compression. EQ, again, I've tailored this a little bit to some of the resonance frequencies in the room here. I've added a bit of a presence boost as well as a little surgical cut for de-essing. And I've rounded out the bass response here so to kind of thicken up the sound between the saturation and the bass. Compression, you'll see I have mild compression going on here, about 4:1, with a threshold set at about -22 dB. So we're getting some compression. So again, fairly typical, I think, of what you'd find in a vocal plug-in chain for doing voiceover anyways. So this is the M3 with in-the-box processing. Now we'll switch over to the channel strips. We'll start out with the ART voice channel. Okay, now you're hearing me on the M3 directly through the ART voice channel with the channel strip processing. What I've done is applied a compression here. I have the threshold set at about -22 dB, about a 4:1 roughly on the ratio. I also have a de-esser here acting and at a kind of a mid-range about 6 kilohertz, and de-essing, reducing it by around 10 dB, a little less than that. I've also applied an expander to try and just clear up any background noise that you might hear. Then as far as EQ, really nothing for a booster cut in the low end. I've got a slight cut going on, about actually 6 dB at around 300, give or take 300 hertz. About the same cut in and around 5 kilohertz. To get rid of just a little bit some of that really shrill tone that's happening here. So that's really what I've done as far as processing. Nothing outrageous here, but just to kind of clean up some of, again, what I think are a little bit of kind of sibilant high sounds with this microphone, as well as it really doesn't need any bass accentuation. It really is a pretty even response all the way through. Other than, again, for my voice, it's a little bit shrill in the higher end. So I've tried to clean that up. And now you're listening to me on the M3 directly into the DBX 286S. You can see here I have the gain set around 130, well, maybe a little less, 1 o'clock. I do have some compression going on here. I have both the drive and the density about halfway up. I have a de-essing happening here, kind of centered around that 5-6K range. Again, very small amount happening. I do have low-end enhancement, a very little bit of high enhancement here. This microphone, again, on my voice tends to be bright enough, so we didn't need much on the high end here, as well as some expression, or expander rather, happening just to help deal with the really low-end sounds in the background. But basically, I don't want any rumble coming through or anything like that. And so this is kind of a typical setup for what I would use on the M3 through the DBX 286S. And back again without processing. And the question really becomes, is this microphone a versatile mic? Can you use it for dialogue? Can you use it with and without processing? Is it good for amp cabinets? Those are really questions you have to see if this is the right mic for you. And if you're interested in looking at other versatile microphones, check out one of the ones on the screen. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.